Hello, I'm John Shepherd, and I'm with Jonathan Ilori, and today we're going to talk about the American track experience.
Yeah. So I went to university in the US. I went to University of Missouri, triple jumper / long jumper. I had a good 4 years there. I studied international studies and French. So I was on the track and field team. I was a captain. Very interesting experience. Obviously, the US system is something that a lot of young athletes explore, and I was very keen to kind of tap into the whole thing and find out why the American triple jump was so good.
Why did you decide to go to Missouri?
Kareem Street Thompson, to put it bluntly.
Kareem being?
Kareem is a coach, a former long jumper. I guess his stats are 9.9 in the 100, 8.63 in the long jump. So that immediately drew me to him and his philosophy. So he was the main reason I went to Missouri. Other than that, I mean, the facilities there looked amazing. It was in a very good conference for track and field. So I think it offered me everything I needed at the time.
So going to an American university, it's not straightforward, is it? There's a kind of a recruitment process that you need to follow.
Yeah, so the recruiting process for American universities is very different to the way you'd look at a UK university. It's very professional. It's quite similar to I guess being recruited to play for a professional sports team in the UK. So my recruiting process to Missouri, I was talking to several schools, several coaches. For me, the most important thing was the coach. I was a very good student in school, but I figured that the main reason I was heading out to the States was for athletics. So I factored the coach into the decision. It was quite high on the priority list, and so I said it was the main reason I went to Missouri to work with Kareem.
As well as the coach, you've got. Well, what about academics?
Yeah, the academic part is important. The term is student athlete, and you're a student first. So of course I wanted to study international relations or similar. So I was looking for a university that could offer that degree. It's very much about finding the right fit for you as an individual, and for me, Missouri had a good international studies program, and they had the perfect coach for me. Location obviously factors in too. If you're someone that doesn't like the cold, then don't look at the Midwest or the East Coast. But I wasn't too bothered about the weather. The main thing I said was finding a good program for me to improve over 4 years.
Okay, and I believe that I know from personal experience as a coach that, because a number of our athletes have gone to the States, that there's a college for everybody. But you've actually set something up, an organisation, a company that can assist in getting UK athletes to American colleges.
Yeah, so I founded Right Track with two other former student athletes, Sarah Abrams and Nana Owosu Nantucci, and we provide guidance throughout the whole process. We have a number of athletes we're dealing with, ranging from year 11 all the way to year 13. And so we take athletes through that entire recruiting process. We provide guidance throughout that whole process and make sure athletes are on the right pathway to getting recruited by a top university or a university suited to them as an individual.
So when does a student athlete in the UK need to start thinking about going to America?
Typically, top year under 17 is the time to start thinking about it. We start the process once athletes have GCSE results. That's the main thing you need as far as the academic transcript. So we've brought on board a number of athletes who've just finished their GCSEs, and we're beginning that essentially a 2-year process. You can sign almost 1 year before you head out there, but in terms of start to finish, it's a 2-year process, which sounds quite long, but it's worthwhile.
By sign, what do you mean exactly?
So signing for a university is when you sign a scholarship, a financial aid agreement with the school, and that pretty much guarantees a scholarship for that 1 year, for that first year. You can call it a contract essentially because it is essentially a contract, and it's there to guarantee your scholarship for that year, and it means you're committing to that school. So once you've signed for university, you can't then start communicating with other universities. You're fully committing to that school.
So you mentioned a year. So conceivably, it's 3 or 4 years, the duration of the course. So what do you mean by just a year?
So a scholarship agreement is renewed every year. That's something that might worry a few student athletes, but coaches see athletes as 4-year projects, so it's never a case that your scholarship is just cut after year 1. Now obviously if you do something wrong as far as academics or outside of school and sports, you could be in that situation, but on the most part you're fine in terms of having a 4-year scholarship, but the scholarship is renewed every year, and once you sign initially in year 13, you're signing for that first year of university.
So in terms of the qualification route, how exactly does that work and what steps does a person have to go through?
So in terms of qualifications, academically you have to have GCSEs and passing grades throughout those GCSEs. You also have to sit an admissions test, the SAT or the ACT. And depending on the school you go to, you've got to satisfy a requirement. So if you're looking at an Ivy League school or a stronger academic school, expect to need a higher score.
Let's just rewind just a second. SATs and what was the other one?
ACT.
So you could have your A levels in the UK, but you then need to do another exam.
Yeah, so you need to sit another exam, typically as close to GCSEs as possible, so right at the start of A levels. And so it is more work because you are sitting another admissions test, but it's a requirement for the process. A levels, because they're graded much later than, you commit to a school, they're almost considered after the fact. If you're going to an Ivy League school, predicted grades are taken into account, but typically at most schools you need GCSEs and an SAT or an ACT. Now, athletically, that varies because it depends on you as an athlete and the team's requirements. If you're looking at a top school like University of Florida, University of Oregon, you're going to need to be competing at the world junior, European junior level. But it varies on the school. There are so many schools in Division 1 and you can look at Division 2, Division 3 and below that. So there isn't a specific standard, but in a general sense, you should be competing at the national championship for your age group. Being ranked top 20, top 15 obviously helps, but you should at least be competing at the national championship for your age group. Now, in terms of what the process looks like in the timeline, it begins with the SAT or the ACT. That's the first thing to address because it is a tricky exam. It's a multiple choice exam. It's quite fast. It's something we're not used to. So that's the first thing to kind of get over. Once you've done that, then we begin communicating with coaches, and that's quite a fluid process.
Let's go back to the exams because anybody watching this might want to know. It's a multiple choice. Multiple choice on what? How far you jump?
Yeah, so it's multiple choice in math, reading, writing, or maths and the reading essentially. The ACT also includes a science section. So that's something to consider. If you're good at maths and science, you probably want to take the ACT, but most students do in the UK take the SAT. Now it's kind of an aptitude test, so it's fast paced, multiple choice. It's much about strategy. In terms of content, it's similar to GCSE/AS level. So getting a tutor, having some assistance with it is recommended just because it's different to what we've experienced here. So in terms of the interaction with the coaching universities and the timeline, that's typically over email. So it begins with communicating with coaches, and that's where we come in terms of introducing athletes to certain universities. And then once you've started communicating over email, you have Skype calls. And I always say to each student, it's not a job interview, but it's a chance for the coach to get to know you and a chance for you to get to know the coach. Typically, you're going to have several Skype calls with coaches because you can't have a Skype call and figure out, okay, I want to go to school there. So you have several Skype calls along the process. And then once the interest is high enough on both ends, you can have an official visit, which is paid for by the university. You can go on 5 official visits, so you might be talking to 10 schools, but you can only go on 5 official visits that are paid for. And that's kind of almost the last step in the process before you'd commit to a university. It's kind of like you confirming, okay, that's where I want to be, and the visit can make or break things. It depends how it goes.
Okay, so we've talked about the recruiting process and exactly how you go through that in order to potentially find a place in the US. Now, once you've got there, as both a student and an academic, what are the pros and cons? I mean, as a coach, I've seen quite a few of our guys go to America rather, and come back and maybe not be in quite the type of shape that I would have liked them to be in. Some have done well, I'm going to say that. But what's your take on it? Yeah,
so there are a lot of pros and cons, and I guess the pros and cons differ for which side you're on, whether you're a coach or an athlete. For an athlete, obviously the major pro is heading out to America and having just a general American experience. It's a massive cultural thing, and it just, I guess, it adds to your enrichment as an individual. Now, the financial side is another big component to consider because depending on your level of performance, you could get a full scholarship, which subsidizes the entire cost of university. I had a full scholarship to Missouri, so I didn't come out with any student debt. So that's something to consider. That's a big pro for a lot of athletes, but it's not the only thing to consider. The NCAA system is, I mean, it's the most competitive university system in the world. So you look at the top times in the 100, the 200, in the 4 hurdles. Some of them are competing at the Olympic and the World Championship level. You see a lot of college athletes make finals. You saw one college athlete come second at the World Championships in the 100 this year. Christian Coleman from Tennessee. So in terms of the competition level, it's massive, and that helps you as an individual because you have to rise to it. Plain and simple, there's no sugarcoating it, you just have to rise to it.
But then we often hear the likes of Steve Cram said, oh, they've had a long season from the US. Yeah. You know, that season can be quite brutal. You know, It starts in December, from what I understand, and goes all the way through to May time. 20 competitions. Yeah,
so it is a long season, and that is something to consider. But so many American coaches have plans much further than just the college schedule. They want to see their athletes competing at Euro Juniors, World Juniors, at World Champs, Olympic Games, because ultimately it makes the university look great. So yes, it is a long season, it's a tough season, but a lot of coaches have a plan in terms of preparing their athletes for the postseason. And that's why you're seeing a lot of college guys at Worlds doing well, getting medals.
We do have to, I suppose as a student athlete, you have to realise, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you are almost like a professional footballer. If Arsene Wenger selects you to play at the weekend, you've got to play. Yeah,
and that's, I mean, if you're looking at a school like Missouri, I was on a $35,000 a year scholarship. The school is making an investment in you, and ultimately you have to return that investment. And so, yes, you've got to compete. You've got to compete and compete hard. There are certain points in the year where the university places greater weight on performance, and they want to see you perform well at conference, at NCAAs, at regionals. And there are certain meets that tend not to mean too much. They're just kind of meets that we're getting through. But definitely, as John said, it's when the school's making an investment in you and you're called upon to compete. Generally, you've got to compete. But so many coaches are familiar with the international system. They're familiar with how we are in the UK. That they work with us in terms of our schedule and how what our aims are as far as the post-college season.
So one of the big draws about going to a US college are the facilities out there and the backup in terms of nutritional support and physiotherapy. Tell us a little bit about that.
So the American universities have incredible facilities and resources. A school like Missouri, for example, we had a football stadium that held 75,000, and basketball and football build so much revenue, and a lot of that money is invested back into the entire sports program. So we had an incredible weight room which dwarfed my Crystal Palace gym that I used to train at here. We had a physio center, so they call it the athletic training room, and in there you have student trainers, athletic trainers, team doctors. So anything I needed as far as rehab, injury prevention, everything was there. Cold tub, hot tubs, underwater treadmills. We had a pretty good physiotherapy department. Nutritionally as well, we had a sports nutritionist, and that helped a lot. So I was able to have scans every semester to see what my body fat percentage was, and I could see people and discuss how I should be eating and how I could change things during the season. We had an athletic dining hall just for athletes, so that was another nice touch. And then the academic resource center, had access to tutors. We had an academic advisor, so we were making sure that academically we were on the right pathway to getting our degree. We had an outdoor track, all the space and the resources that you would need. The fun stuff, the gear, you can see me wearing my Missouri top still. So universities will have a brand sponsor. It could be Adidas or Nike or Under Armour, whoever, and it essentially gives you access to gear through that company. So at Missouri we had free Nike stuff, so shoes, spikes, shorts, t-shirts, hats, everything was all in Nike. And it's a massive burden lift off your shoulders, because I know for young athletes a pair of trainers or some shorts and t-shirts could be quite expensive. So again, that cost is subsidized, and you essentially have a kit deal.
So now that you've come back to potentially sunny England, but not often, what's it like? What's the sea change like?
So the transition is different. Obviously I mentioned in America you have so many resources, and the one thing that's hard is that maybe my physio is in one location, my track coach is in another location, my strength coach is in a different location. So that it's very different adjusting to not having everything under one roof, and that is a difficult thing as far as progression in that first year out of college. But I guess the experience you take from it is massive. I've found that I'm a lot more confident at competitions because I've competed against some of the world's best, and that's helped my performance in the UK. And I guess I've found that work-wise, it's been a pretty good transition because employers love hearing about people who have gone to America, because it says a lot about you as an individual that you've taken that jump, you've taken that leap. If you want to explore working in America, that's also something you can look at. Professionally, in terms of the track and field world, competing in NCAA is a great platform to going pro. A lot of sponsors and agents will look at the NCAA championships to sign athletes. So if you're looking at going that route, competing in NCAA is massive. For me personally, it's been great because I've come back and set up Right Track and helping future prospects throughout the whole process. So it is a transition, it's adjustment ultimately, but I think it depends on what your aims are as an individual. For me personally, it's worked out great.
One thing that we haven't, haven't covered when you say about it working out great on the return, it might not actually work great when you're out there in terms of, you're thousands of miles away, you left your family and friends behind. Can that be an issue, and what support mechanisms are in place to help student athletes? How did you find it? Yeah,
so it's a long way from home, and there will be times where you're missing your coach, you're missing your family, your friends. You're just missing being in England. You might miss just eating fish and chips.
Probably not.
So it's a transition, obviously heading out there and a cultural shock. What's nice about the track and field team is like one big family, and the athletic department as a whole, it's like one big family, and you can speak to whoever on the team, and they're going to kind of help you through the down points in the year. Also, your coach is there as a supporting role. At Missouri, I had sports psychologists, and they helped a lot in terms of building confidence throughout the season, because that was quite hard for me to deal with, going from competing at junior league to competing against guys jumping 17 meters. So it is a long way from home, and it's a cultural shock, but you have a family around you and so many resources in terms of helping you get over that hump.
That family, how easy is it to make friends as an English person, or a Scottish, or an Irish, or Welsh for that matter?
It's actually pretty easy. Americans, they love British people, especially they love the British accent. So making friends wasn't a problem. And you'll find on the track team, in a triple jump group, you're going to have training with 4 or 5 guys. The sprints group's going to be the same, maybe more. So you're going to be meeting so many different people, and all of them are going to be really interested to speak with you. So making friends is never an issue. You just got to, I guess, open your mouth
and speak English to a degree.
Exactly.
All right, probably rounding up now. I'm just on that social side of things. Obviously, it's going to depend on what area of the States that you're in. Is it a place to go? I mean, that's a bit of a general question, but there's just, even me as a young person, America has that allure, that attraction. Did it meet your expectations?
Yeah, I mean, it was different. There were regions of America that seemed quite backwards, and that for me was a cultural shock. As a whole, it met my expectations. It was really, in some ways, it was just like I imagined on TV. But there were some times I was like, wow, they think are very different to the way we do in the UK. But socially, I mean, politically, America's a different place right now, and I know it's going through some tough times. But for internationals and for student athletes, you're going to be going to university in a place that's diverse. Missouri had 35,000 students. So in terms of being international friendly, rest assured you're probably going to be in a place that's suited to you as an international. Yeah, so the American university system is quite broad, and you have a lot of freedom in your degree. First and foremost, it's a 4-year degree, so that is longer than a typical UK degree. And your first 2 years are essentially general education years. You don't actually declare your major until the end of your second year. So you have that time to explore different subjects in different fields. I always say you can be an engineer one day and be an interior designer the next day. You can figure out what it is you're trying to do with your life, which I know for 17, 18-year-olds, it's quite a hard decision to make. So it's quite broad. I did international studies in French, but I took classes in sports nutrition, in sports psychology, in music. So nothing to do with politics or international relations at all. So you can be you have a lot of freedom to explore. Within your degree, you're going to have requirements, of course, and you can pick and choose those requirements. But you're also going to have electives where you can take almost like fun classes that aren't anything to do with your degree. So it's quite nice having that freedom. At times it can feel like you're not doing anything relevant to your degree, but for me personally, and I think for a lot of students, they enjoyed having that freedom and they enjoyed exploring different fields, and ultimately that makes you a bit more employable.
Okay, well I think that probably wraps it up. So just tell us the name of it's Right Track, isn't it? But what's the website if people want to find out more details about it?
Yeah, so the website's righttracksports.co.uk. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter or Facebook.